You okay with glasses?
Glasses look good. I like the glasses. Glasses look good.
Okay.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And I feel like every episode I start off by saying it's been a journey, but damn, it's been a journey, and the journey continues. But for this journey, I think part of the beauty of what I've looked at as an early adopter is looking at the not only the trends but the trendsetters. And there's very few people that we've been able to kind of bring on the podcast that I got to know pre-podcast, and then also got to kind of follow along on this journey. And this today's episode will be a little bit of an exception to that rule, which I super excited to share, to talk, kind of lean into some of the kind of the world we've been in as creators. And so, without further ado, Doc Peace, thanks so much for joining the podcast. Long overdue, but excited to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here and to connect with your community at NFT 365.
Yes. So yeah, we actually met. I like to think of it as the first NFT NYC. Where there, I know there was one prior, but most people weren't even at that one. But we got to meet at Margaritaville there
We did.
in New York, which feels like, I mean, it feels like 5 years ago, like
It,
easily, right? Like easily,
decades.
yeah, easily. I mean, it's before pretty much every one of our listeners, before every NFT that you hold that you like is before they were even thought of, right? Like it was before that whole world. But we've also then been able to go to a lot of events together, share a lot of the same stages, and I just love who you represent as a brand, as a personality, as also as someone that stands up for what they believe in. And excited to have you on the show from that side. For those aren't as familiar of your journey, give us a little taste of pre Web3, pre getting to meet you at Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville, and then we'll kind of get into some of the things that you have going on in your world today.
Wonderful. Firstly, I want to say how present you are and how I love how present you are. When you're there, you are there. You're there to connect, you're there to vibe, you're there to absorb, you're there to teach, you're there everything. So that's something I really
Thank you.
noticed about you, Brian. So thank you for that. So for those of you who I haven't yet had the pleasure of connecting with, my name is Dr. Peace Uche. Many people refer to me as Doc Peace. I'm a doctor by trade. So that's what many people don't really know. They don't realize that I'm actually a doctor of pharmacy specifically. So before I shifted to the Web3 space, I was practicing as a pharmacist in more of the corporate behind the scenes settings. So I was working for multi just I was managing multi-billion dollar companies and supporting them with their assets. Like, I mean, when I say this out loud, it blows my mind that I was doing that at the time, but it's something that it didn't really light me up in that creative way. It paid the bills. It made me look really good. As a Nigerian American, that's really important in my family to look good on paper.
Right.
And it checked all the boxes in terms of consistent income, being able to afford a car, a really nice car, being able to afford a really nice place to live. It, looking the role of a successful individual, but it didn't really align, like I said, with what I felt that I wanted to do when I said I wanted to help people. And I think many of us want to help people, and then we get caught up in that idea of what it looks like to help people, right? Rather than coming up with our own way of actually helping people. And when I decided to pivot, that decision actually landed in my lap in the form of a 5 words. 5 words is when this decision landed in my lap, and these 5 words were, Dr. Peace Uche, we have to let you go. So we have to let you go were those 5 words that changed my life. And when I was laid off from this corporate position, I had one of two choices. I could either go back and start over essentially at another corporate facility doing the same thing that I knew what to do, how to do it, or I could try something new. And that's exactly what I did. I started my own business. Became a long story short. It became a business consulting business because that's what I knew how to do. I started my own entrepreneurial business as a speaker, and I wanted to teach others how to do that as well, how to tie in these important business like insights so that they can grow and launch their own companies and be able to package their expertise and serve who they want to serve, helping people again. And so that's what I did before Web3. And it paid the bills. It did all the things that I wanted, that I was doing in the pharmacy space, and then some. But again, it wasn't that like creative like expression that I was craving. And so you know me as a spoken word poet. And that's when I finally found what really lights me up. So yes, I still work as business consulting. I still do those like those these I wouldn't call them mundane tasks, but I really am passionate about really helping people understand the importance of having that business mindset, that's the strategy behind what it is you create. Because many people create tools that no one really wants. And so having that mindset and being able to manage that is really important. However, the spoken word piece is what really lights me up. And when you see me on these stages, and I know we've shared these stages multiple times, so you see me perform, you can see that the energy in the room, that's palpable. And so I often refer to myself as a doctor by trade, spoken word poet at heart, because that's truly where my heart resides. So that's what I was doing outside of the Web3 space. And when I shifted to the Web3 space, I brought all of that with me: the business consulting, strategy, helping other people who were curious about the Web3 space pivot to the NFT space. In fact, that's the name of one of my courses, Pivot to NFTs. And then working with brands, companies to strategically share their story and using spoken word, leveraging spoken word, as I like to call it, for that powerful storytelling.
I I love the vulnerability. I love you sharing that part of the story. For so many of our past guests, one of my favorite aspects is just letting people recognize the amazing backgrounds that so many people have in this space. Like it's just we've had a couple others that have been doctors in the medical field that most were not aware of. We've had people from all walks of life, from being celebrity chefs to just so many creative
Wow.
aspects, right? And I think the beauty in that is like being able to not only continue to do what you like, what lights you up, but also tap in to that background, right? And I think that energy that you convey as a spoken word poet and as someone that really convey, you empower as well as inspire, right? Which I think is that beautiful combination of how you connect with people. Where I think a lot of people will share their message or their story, and they'll kind of do one or the other, and it's harder for people to kind of relate and connect. But you also kind of walk your own walk, which I appreciate. And I have to say, when you said those 5 words, those 5 words were the same 5 words I got the last time I worked at a corporate company. I helped a company buy the company that we were working for, the startup I was working for. And on day one of that company taking over, they walked into my office and said, in no better terms, I don't know what the hell it is you've done for this company for the last 2 years. I'm not sure how you've got away with what you've been doing, but
No.
this is the end. This is kind of like your kind of last jaunt forward. And for me, I remember that feeling. And as you were saying that, it brought a lot of that to light for me. And unfortunately, I didn't have Web3 at the time. I kind of was in like this weird lost space of a creator that had kind of been known a little bit on the social media side,
Mhm.
but I was known more so for what for what I was putting out there to the world and less about kind of behind the scenes, which I think we can both relate to that on. I'm curious, we met prior to this whole NFT world kind of exploding and then in a way imploding and now kind of resetting, setting itself. I'm As this journey, what are some of the things you've been able to tap in to your background and your kind of commitment, right? Because I think that commitment to who you are and what lights you up, like to me, that's like the most inspiring element of anyone, right? Anyone that can step into their greatness, step into that energy, it takes more courage than anyone realizes, right? It takes more commitment and conviction and betting in yourself. But I also believe, like, as great as that can be, there's also so much of that kind of pays off down the road. So talk to me a little bit about, like, what are you over the last, let's say, 2 years or so, what aspects of your background and your career have you been able to really tap in to continue to drive forward, in this NFT space, especially?
Yeah. So one thing that really I feel has really been speaking to me lately is, again, this fact that we all tell ourselves to follow our passions, right? To find our purpose and follow those passions. But if you're creating something that is in alignment with your passion, but again, no one really wants or has even asked for what it is you're creating, then it just lands flat.
Yes.
And so when I entered into the Web3 space, I was like, okay, these are my skill sets. I'm able to effectively communicate. I'm able to uh, utilize spreadsheets and analyze numbers. I'm able to assess trends. I'm able uh, to manage like assets. I'm able to memorize things and be able to speak those things that I memorized off memory. I listed off all of my skill sets, my gifts, and spoken word, of course, was one of those gifts. And I asked myself, what could I offer this new space that I found myself in? I had already been doing some consulting, the business consulting. My business consulting was going really well. And so when I shifted to the space, the question was, okay, how could I utilize my passion and my skill sets, my gifts, and all the things to actually provide value to people who are here? And so I don't know if you know, but when I first entered into the space, when we connected, that same week, I attended the Gary Vaynerchuk event. He put on this event outside of the NFT NYC conference, satellite event, and I ended up closing out his event with spoken word poetry. And that was the way in which I tested this theory of mine that spoken word could land in this space. It could provide some sort of value. And it did. It did. I realized it landed really well, and it was very empowering and inspiring, like you said, and that's the power of spoken word. But then I wanted to take a step further. Rather than me just sharing my story, which is empowering and inspiring, how could I provide value to others? And many people are looking for marketing support. They're looking for support with their marketing campaigns. They're looking for support with sharing their story, building community, uniting their community, all the things, even profit generation, right? That's the biggest thing for marketing, right? Bringing in more community members, bringing in more profits. And so I said to myself, one of the things that lights me up, a lot of things do, but one of the things that lights me up is not just performing spoken word poetry, but writing pieces, writing the poetry, and being able to identify and strategically share not just my story, but other stories. And so that's how I fell into this. I wouldn't say fell into, that's how I created this path for myself that you see me in now,
Right.
as someone who works with companies, brands, products, and events to create these customized marketing assets that leverage spoken word as that modality to share strategically the story of that particular brand, the reason why they're here, the reason why they're present, the reason why others should join them in their endeavors. And so when you ask like how I stay true to that, it's because it's the thing that I do with the least amount of resistance.
Mm.
It's the thing that I do with the least amount of effort, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I'm gonna tap into that because I think there's often this, because you mentioned earlier, I think, and this is one, I mean, it's been a soapbox of mine since 2013, 2014, on like, it's great to find your passion and your purpose, but if you can't connect that with either what people are willing to pay for or being able to monetize it in a way that allows you to do it, it's where most people crash and burn. And unfortunately, they will listen to someone like a Gary Vee, and if they listen to all that he's sharing, they can figure out that it's much more than that path. But if they listen to sound bites or to just titles of blogs, then they'll make, they'll have misconceptions that will often be aligned there. And I think that's where a lot of people will kind of blame the system or blame what didn't fit for me. And you're like, well, wait a second, like, it's great to have this and it's great to hone that, but like, you have to tap in. And what you mentioned there, I think, is often the other part of the struggle, is that if it comes easy to us, it's often a struggle for us to recognize that it's worth others paying for, right? Like,
Yes,
because
that.
it's like, wait, I do it naturally. And
Mhm.
so in a way, and I say this because I struggle, right? Until I had launched my very first speaker mastermind, like, I had this like weird notion, like, I'm really good at what I do on stage, and I know that my skill set presents me that. But then I was like, why would someone want to pay for that? Or how would I even monetize that? And so I love that you tap that, because I think for so many people that are listening to this, and I know so many people in our community, to me, it's not about launching an NFT, but it's about understanding the value in who you are and what you deliver. Talk to me a little bit about how you kind of have figured out that side of it, right? Because, I will just say, just from I always laugh when someone's like, well, Brian, you have no problem, speaking in front of, thousands and 20s of thousands of people. Will you do karaoke, or would you go do spoken word, or do a comedy night? And I'm like, those things scare the living death out of me, right?
They're
Like,
completely separate.
just because I have a microphone on a stage does not connect to, but like, I will also say the amount of respect I have for people that share a very similar delivery method is something that, like, I've always like appreciated, like, creator to creator. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I think for many, connecting spoken word to monetization is a gap that they probably, and it doesn't mean that they're spoken word. They could be an AI artist. They could be someone that is a podcaster. It could be someone that is really great in their own niche, as maybe helping educators. I have someone in my mind that is someone that works great with educators to create better syllabus and better content for students. And there's like a gap for them on, like, how do I connect that to business, or even where does Web3 come in? How do you approach that in your world? Because I think it'll connect so well to our audience.
Yeah, so this is actually the very first module or segment of my Pivot to NFTs program. So many creators or service providers, entrepreneurs, they come to me with this exact same question. What could I offer this growing community that's very new to me? Or maybe sometimes they've been in the space, but they haven't offered anything yet too with the space. So they're trying to figure out exactly how they can provide value. And the very first thing that we do together is dial in your list. I call it your golden list to get gold, and soon you'll see why. The I'm really big on acronyms. You'll and this is something that
I
I don't
like
know
I
if you
like me
know
some
about me.
acronyms.
Yeah, it comes from the pharmacy world, being able to memorize, being in order to memorize so many different drugs and names and disease states, acronyms come very much in handy. So that's
See, mine comes the other way. I work for the U.S. government, and everything in the military and government is acronym hell. Like, you're in, like, they get acronyms thrown at you, but then eventually that's where we connect. So I'm with you. I'm all about some acronyms.
there's some power in these acronyms,
There
especially
are.
if you create them yourself.
Right. Yes. Correct. That's a great, very valid point. That's a very valid point.
So this acronym is GET, and it's your gifts, your expert skills, and your talents. And when you take the time to dial in what your unique gifts are, your skill sets that you learn throughout your career path, and your talents, the things that really light you up, that you've spent days, hours, years just in it, just dialing in this talent because it lights you up. Like, those are the things that you can then start realizing, like, how could you package these skill sets, these talents, these gifts into something that actually solves a gap, that solves a need for someone else, that fills that gap and solves a need for someone else rather. And one thing that I feel like many people don't, or skip this step, is they do this assessment, right? They understand what their gifts, skills, and talents are. They listed out 7 of each so that way they have a lot to work with. But then they package and create something that no one really wants. They don't take the time to actually fill in a gap or to do the market research to see if there's an actual need for what it is that that you can provide, that what it is you can give with your unique set of gifts, skill sets, and talents. So I believe everyone has this unique set. Like no one else has the exact same set of gifts, skill sets, and talents as you, as me, as everyone listening. If we were all to do this assessment, someone out there could probably calculate the odds of someone else having this unique set. But there's going to be a lot of differences between those two individuals. And so they're going to attract different people. They're going to repel different people. and and once you take the time to identify this list, this list to get gold, and again, this is another acronym. Gold is not just the monetary gold, right? The money. It's a powerful acronym that I created, which stands for Genuine, Original, Loving Dreamer. So once you take the time to write this list of gifts, expert skills, and talents, it then allows you to get gold, meaning that you're now in alignment with what it is that makes you genuine, original, loving dreamer. And now you can follow those steps to finally manifest those dreams by following what you love. But again, it really requires you to do that market research to figure out if what it is you have can then support others with what it is they need.
And I tell you what, I mean, I love everything about that. And I will say, you're mentioning like the skill sets of a doctor, right? And Delphi Cat, who's on my team, is a doctor as well, and the medical side of the world. And one of the things she like always always connected where there were skill sets that she had that I'm not haven't been exposed to many doctors in my life, right? There's other than going to the doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many of the skill sets from like bedside manner to translating complex things that either we don't understand or we don't want to understand,
Yep.
and translating them in a way to relate is such a it's a godsend in every way, and it's such a skill that I believe transcends everything that we're doing. I would argue the more AI we integrate in the life, the more that skill set is going to be in demand.
Yep.
But I also think the gap there for many is that they might see themselves, they might connect with what you're sharing there, but then there's the act of either creating content or getting up on a stage and kind of tapping into your other skill sets, where for you it's the spoken word. How have you approached that side, right? As podcasts and newsletters and social content out there, I think for a lot of people that they relate and probably connect with having similar skill sets or similar drive and background, but making that jump might be the hardest one for many. What was some of the things that you did early on, or what are the things that you could connect with, that you were like, hey, I can create content, I can put this message out in a newsletter? Because those are, as much as they're marketing tactics,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of like the bleeding edge of the business side, which, let's face it, some very successful businesses that have been around for 80 years still have not figured out, right? Like they're still finding success without that. Talk to me a little bit about that gap, because I don't think the natural doctor background and your skill set would have easily transitioned into the content creator world, but it's natural for you, as I've seen as as a consumer of your content.
Thank you. So that's so very true. They didn't teach a lot of this to me, to any of us in pharmacy school, unfortunately. Which is interesting to say, because I was actually invited back to my pharmacy school, my alma mater, UCSD, SCAS School of Pharmacy, to deliver a 1.5 hour keynote on how I'm utilizing the skill sets I learned during pharmacy school and working as a pharmacist to have my own business. And like you said, there's a lot of transferable skill sets. And that's a really key one that you pointed out, their ability to basically speak in different languages, right?
Yes.
To change something into a way that more people can understand, to translate that. And that's definitely a very valuable skill set. But going back to your question about how I was able to pretty much teach myself or understand the importance of content creation, honestly, I had to get help. I've worked with multiple coaches. I've signed up with multiple coaches and consulted with multiple individuals to teach me how to do what I'm doing in terms of showing up on social media, how to pitch media, to get on other podcasts or to get on newspaper articles and to even to get on Forbes. So I had to work on understanding what went into being featured on these platforms. And then when I did get those opportunities, I had to work on what to say when I got these opportunities, what to say when I landed a podcast interview, what to say when I got the okay to be on in Forbes. What am I going to say in Forbes? Like, how can I submit to get featured in these on these platforms? And I realized that it has a lot to do with not just showing up, but then having something of value when you show up. Because then it's a ripple effect. More people see you and they want to connect with you more, and it opens up the door. So I went from doing these cold outreaches to then now people approach me and they ask, can you be on my podcast? Can we feature you on this paper that we're writing for such and such with David Bianchi, for example? Like, making those opportunities happen initially, but then once you do that and once you show up and you give value, then more and more doors open. So going back to your question, how did I get started? I asked for help and I received the help that was given to me. And another thing that I did was I strategized in terms of creating time to do all the things I needed to do, scheduling content creation in my calendar. This is something I still do, even though I have a team now. So making time every Friday to create content for the next week. And then really taking the time to let me go back. When I first started, I was all on my own. Now I have a team, not just an internal team, but I've partnered with multiple teams. So I have a media team now, and their main role is to get me featured in media outlets, for example. And so when you first get started, I would say the biggest thing is to set strategic times for yourself to do the outreach. And for example, the first week of the month, you could set the time 4 hours on Wednesday to pitch media outlets, to pitch as many media outlets as possible. And there's like websites for pitching these media outlets. I'm blanking on the name right now, but there's one in particular. Help a reporter out. Help a reporter out.
Haro. Yep. I've had Haro actually the original founder of Haro has been a guest on the podcast. So Peter Shankman, the original founder of Haro. So yes, very familiar.
Go back and listen to that episode because that's going to really, I'm sure that's going to really give you some insights as to how to pitch these reporters, because they're looking for content. And if you can provide that content you're looking for, it's an easy feature. It's a win-win. So initially, when you're looking for like avenues to get featured, to build your brand, spend at least 4 hours a month to outreach to these reporters and build rapport with them, so that when you add value, they're coming back and wanting more value, and you'll get more and more features. And then when it comes to content creation, schedule time for yourself to create that content. And I know many people might not be able to spend 4 hours a day or 4 hours on Fridays creating content for the next week, but you can divide that content up. And now with the advent of AI, you can record 10 minutes of footage and then use an AI tool to divide up that footage into short little blocks with beautiful subtitles and it'll just create the content for you in a second that would take you hours upon hours to do, but it requires you to set that time to create that initial content. And then it also requires you to understand which tools are helpful, which tools could help you on that journey of really utilizing your time and maximizing that time that you have.
Yeah, I mean, on my calendar still every single week. I always do two content blocks on my calendar, not because I need twice the time, but with my ADHD and my own creator blocks, I have to give myself permission or forgiveness to be like, okay, today is not actually, and truthfully, yesterday there was my second half of my day was blocked yesterday for creation, and I was not in a creation headspace. I went to start, and I've known myself long enough, and I was like, yeah, this isn't me. I was like, I'm gonna tap into my Friday time slot that I have in, and
Mhm.
I kind of switched, and I love that piece of it. And I also have to say, there's something about successful people in their profession and their background. Your ability to be confident enough to ask for help is something that people just don't recognize enough. And I recognize it because I struggle, and I've struggled with it for most of my career. I think it has a little bit to do with my ADHD and rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and some things that I know that I'm still working on. But I just I love and appreciated your answer on like, hey, I found people that knew what the hell they were doing, and I hired them, and I was able to consume that and take that and deliver that. And I think that is it's such a game changer when you can do that. And for me, I would say I probably did things that took me 4 years that if I would have just asked for help, it would have taken me less than a year, and I would have been off and running. And unfortunately, I kicked it down the curb, and I had to learn everything myself. And so I love that you brought that in. And I think in that note, as we kind of bring this episode together, as someone, you mentioned David Bianchi, he's been a previous guest of the podcast. And I just, the spoken word art form to me is there's such a beauty of it. Like, if most people that know the podcast, my escape, my mental health break is TikTok. I'm obsessed. I consume a
Same.
ton of TikTok. But I also think it's because like TikTok just gets to know me, and like I have a lot of spoken word content that is in my TikTok feed, from an appreciation of the wordsmithing to the storytelling to how what words they don't use as much as the words that they do use. Like, I just really appreciate those pieces of the craft. For those that are trying to tell their story, that are trying to get themselves noticed or get discovered, or even grow their NFT project or what they're working on, what are some things that you could share with us from the spoken word craft that we could kind of help make us better storytellers in what we're doing here in Web3?
Two things: get vulnerable. Give yourself permission to drop into that vulnerable space, because that's the core power of spoken word. When you share a story that's near and dear to your heart, that sounded really sappy right now, but when you share a story that is that you connect with at a deeper level, it allows you to drop into that vulnerable space. And when you drop into that vulnerable space, that's where true connections are made. So let yourself get vulnerable when you're sharing your story. And then secondly, open with that deepest point that you can identify. Like, open with that. Like, it's similar to when you write pieces of content, and you always want to have that first liner draw people in.
Oh yeah, your hook, right?
Your
That
hook, right?
Yes.
So what can you open with that is aligned with your story, but really draws people in from the beginning?
Hmm. It's so funny. You said those two things, and now like each spoken word that I consume, they hit that so beautifully. But I don't think I identified those two as connecting. I love that, and I think for those that are listening, I think that's also such a those things can kind of, as you lean into each of them, right? They unlock
Mhm.
additional components. For those that are listening, that want, we'll put your social handles and things in the show notes. But talk to me a little bit about newsletters, course. I know you. What are the things that are out there that you're currently working on that got you excited? And we'll definitely send people those directions, because I know you've connected with a lot of our audience.
Yes, most definitely. I appreciate you for asking. So one thing that we recently launched is a pep talks to strategically share your story. And in this weekly newsletter, we share tips and insights and tricks on how to share your story strategically.
Mm.
So, how to articulate your message and how to outreach to certain sources and platforms so that you have the opportunity to share your story on these platforms so that you can grow. You can grow your brand, you can grow your community, and it gives you massive exposure, but it also allows you to get more comfortable with sharing those stories. And again, when you share your story, you drop into that vulnerable space, and that's where true connections are made.
Mm.
So, we have our pep talks to strategically share your story newsletter, and we're currently working on another blog. And this one is more so for creative entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out what tools they can leverage to support their creative expression.
Mm.
So, we're dropping another blog, and it's all about giving you tips and tools and insights on all these new creative tools that are popping up. We're going to be dialing in these emerging trends, but also really showing you how you, as a creator, can utilize these tools and really uh, make the most of your time, and there's and not get lost in the hustle and bustle. So, just going back to what we were talking about with the content creation, one of the things that we're doing, and I'm really excited about, is we're starting a series on TikTok
Nice.
called Tech Talks on the Boardwalk.
Ooh.
So I'll be conducting chats with my community members, my local community, on what they're thinking, what they're using in terms of emerging technologies, and what their thoughts are around some of these tools like AI, ChatGPT, NFTs, if they're still investing in crypto given the current market. So having those types of conversations, and then based off those conversations, linking them to these tools that are out there that are trending, so that you can learn what other people are doing, and also see what other tools other people are leveraging,
Love
and
that.
maybe tools that they maybe should be leveraging.
For sure. No, that's great. I love both of those. I think are not only needed in this space, but I think as we continue to grow, right, as we continue to look at this creator economy, I think I look at the creator economy as that ever evolving aspect of not only how do we tap into our energy that you shared at the very beginning, but also how do we prioritize, monetize, and then ultimately, I think the thing that we probably you and I connect on the most is how do we make the world a better place, right? How do we really make the impact that we know that we want to be? Because I will say, I think when I look at it now, there's still some bad actors in the space as a whole, but the people that got into this space because they were like, hey, I believe we can make an impact on the world. I believe we can do things differently. We can reset those tables that we've never understood why voices weren't on those tables, and really tap into the things that like we care about the most. I mean, that's what you're doing and leading the way on. So I love that you were able to come on. This was a lot of fun. I know time flew by. We'll put links in the show notes. You're definitely a great follow on social for anyone that gets a chance to see you on stage as well. I just love the energy. And we can match energy in our own unique ways. And Doc Peace, it was so much fun to have you on. Any last words you want to share before we send everybody on their way?
Yeah, I feel like we're leaving everyone on a cliffhanger because I didn't give an example of an
Ooh,
opening line that really draws you in. So I just want to leave everyone with that opening line as the closing line.
I love it.
I have nothing to offer. I said first in my mind, then again out loud. My safe space was a space between the baseboards and the mattress. Underneath the bed was where I felt safest.
Ooh, goosebumps, goosebumps. Doc Peace, thank you, my friend. You rock. It's a pleasure to be on this journey with you. And for everyone listening, tap into your energy, tap into what Doc has shared here. And until next time, everybody, make it a great day. Cheers.